Everything that lives is designed to end. We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death. Is this a curse? Or some kind of punishment? I often think about the god who blessed us with this cryptic puzzle, and wonder if we'll ever have the chance to kill him.
NieR Automata is a game about android ninjas in futuristic gothic Lolita fashion that slash, hack, and punch their way through robots in a post-apocalyptic world. And you may be asking yourself, what does this weird anime game have anything to do with existentialism? Yet somehow, NieR Automata takes all its clashing elements and turns it into a story that tells one of the most insightful and compelling tales about what it means to be alive, to exist, and be human. To give you a bit of an overview in order to better understand the story, NieR Automata is set in the year 11,945 on Earth, which is also a reference to the year World War II ended. The Earth is populated with artificial beings, where a mysterious plague and invasion of machine-making aliens have wiped humanity out from the planet. The last threats of mankind have fled to a hidden base on the moon, and deploys an army of advanced combat androids, Yorha, to combat the machine army of the aliens. The androids are built in humanity's image, while the machines are rusty, blocky constructs. The machines and androids are locked in an endless proxy war on behalf of their creators, who are conspicuously absent from this conflict. Surprisingly enough, NieR Automata is not a game that tries to answer the question, at what point does artificial or robot life become human? Instead, it utilizes its far-future sci-fi setting to interrogate exactly what makes us human in the first place. Throughout the story, NieR Automata repeatedly references philosophers through either plot points that directly reflect their beliefs, or literally just putting characters in the game named after them. We can utilize these philosophers' works and ideas to better understand some of the events that lead up to the final message of the game. The eternal return, as said by Nietzsche, is the idea of time repeating itself in an infinite loop, and that the same events we experience in our lifetime will return again and again. Nietzsche writes in The Gay Science, what if some day or night a demon were to steal into your loneliest loneliness and say to you, this life as you now live and have lived, you will have to live once again and innumerable times again, and there will be nothing new in it, but every pain and every joy must return to you, all in the same succession and sequence. The question in each and everything, do you want this again and innumerable times again? Through this thought experiment, Nietzsche asks us if we knew that our lives were bound to happen the same way over and over again, how we would react and what manner in which we would proceed with our lives. Nietzsche suggests that most people would consider this a curse, and that it would require the most impassioned love of life in order to bear this knowledge, saying that, how well disposed would you have to become to yourself and to life to long for nothing more fervently than for this eternal confirmation and seal? The idea is horrifying and paralyzing, as it carries the heaviest weight imaginable. However, it is also the ultimate affirmation of life. It is the rock that fills the emptiness and weightless void of nihilism. To comprehend and embrace the eternal return, one requires a love of fate and the acceptance and affirmation of the events of life. The concept of the eternal return is reflected quite literally within the world of NieR Automata. Two of our protagonists, 2B and 9S, have lived the same lives over and over again. It is revealed later in the game that 2B's purpose is to kill 9S and reset his memory every time he finds out too much about the organization that they serve. Being androids, they cannot die, and each time their bodies are destroyed, their data is simply uploaded into a new body, and thus they are cast again and again into the same cycle of violence and war that they have been trapped in. This fact is even foreshadowed in her introductory speech, in which 2B states, "We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death." And for her and 9S, the statement is quite literal. They are trapped in Nietzsche's cycle of the eternal return, and much like he writes, they gnash their teeth and curse the demon who spoke thus. Aside from the eternal return though, analysis of Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra, especially the three metamorphoses, helps us understand the story progression of the characters much better. It is important to note that in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, the setting is a barren wasteland that lays outside the comforts of daily life. It is a place of forced change, as it is an environment hostile towards life itself. Traveling the desert is dangerous and arduous, yet proves fruitful in regards to uncovering new truths and knowledge. But first, what are the three metamorphoses? As stated by Nietzsche, the three metamorphoses are how the spirit becometh a camel, the camel a lion, and the lion at last a child. According to him, these are the three stages of mental development that all consciousness go through. The first state is the camel, a consciousness that feeds on the acorns and grass of knowledge, and for the sake of truth to suffer hunger of soul, to go into foul water when it is the water of truth. All these heaviest things the load-bearing spirit taketh upon itself, and like the camel, which when laden, hasteneth into the wilderness. The camel, as described by Nietzsche, symbolizes self-discipline and self-denying practices that ultimately benefit the mind. It burdens itself with the knowledge and truths of the past, while at the same time moving forwards into the unknown wilderness to uncover more. It then transforms into the lion, which will capture freedom and lordship in its own wilderness. The lion lusts for freedom and self-determination within the wilderness, yet encounters a great enemy, a dragon called Thou Shalt. It is characterized with 1,000 years of glitter on its scales, and it speaks to the lion. Thou shalt. All the values of things glitter on me. All values have already been created, and all created values do I represent. Verily, there will be no I will anymore. Against this, the lion revolts to destroy these false values, and while it is true that in Zarathustra's eyes that the lion can revolt, creating new values is beyond the ability of the lion. After the lion rebels, it is stated that at its holiest it once loved Thou Shalt. Now it is forced to find illusion and arbitrariness in even the holiest things, that it may capture freedom from its love. The lion is needed for this capture. It has lost the former system of values that it once believed to be the truth, and now has entered a state of purposelessness. This is where the lion turns into the child. Innocence is the child, and forgetfulness, a new beginning, a game, a self-rolling wheel, a first movement, a holy yeah. The being as a child is a state of being in which the consciousness can now create new values and new purposes for itself. At last, the old and false values are overthrown, nihilism is overcome, and the spirit becomes the new purpose giver of the world. The child is now the creator of value and meaning for itself. To summarize, the three metamorphoses are the camel, the brutal search for absolute truth or knowledge; the lion, the realization of the absence of such values and consequently the destruction of the old values; and the child, the creation of a new meaning of the world, existence, and values by the self. We can easily apply the three metamorphoses to the 5 endings of the game. In endings A and B, our characters relate to the state of the camel. They shoulder the knowledge that they already know, meaning the knowledge of the war, their mission, and the cruelty of the world as they know it. They don't shy away from new knowledge, such as knowledge that not all machine life forms are evil. The more they discover, the more they begin to doubt the purpose given to them by their creators. Ending C and D relate to the state of being a lion. This is when they realize that all the knowledge they have believed to be truths thus far turn out to be lies. They realize that the war they have been fighting has always been pointless. It turns out that the humans have been dead for millennia by now, and that Yorha, the organization they've always served, has been lying to them this entire time. The purpose that they believe to be their absolute truth, fighting for humanity to survive on Earth once more, is completely and undeniably proven to be a lie. They rebel against the Yu Shao embodied by the remnants of their belief in humans. In ending E, they finally achieve the state of the child. Their pod assistants revolt against the directive to delete the data of the androids after the dust has settled after the final battle. And with their decision to instead restore the 3 androids, the pod have become their own creators of value. 2B, 9S, and A2 are left without their original purpose, values, and truths, yet they are free to create their own meaning of life, as they successfully endure the state of being the lion. The actions that were taken in the last arc of the game can be read as a transition into an absurdist outlook. Despite the meaninglessness of their existences, our protagonists carry on and find meaning from within. Let's take a look at the final events in the game, which all point to Camus' philosophy of the absurd. As the game nears its conclusion and enters the final act, there seems to be no hope whatsoever for our protagonists to have a happy ending. The humans that they have fought to protect have been dead for millennia, with their last chance at revival having disappeared long ago. They are left without purpose, meaning, and really just have no reason to exist anymore from their own perspectives. It becomes evident to you, the player, that the only way to achieve a happy ending for our 3 beloved protagonists is to break free of the cycle of conflict. Lo and behold, by the time the climax of the story arrives, all 3 of them are dead. Their pod caretakers are preparing for a final memory wipe of this generation of androids and begin a new incarnation of the cycle of conflict. Yet, against the odds, the programmed pods suddenly have a change of heart. They deny the request to delete the androids' personal data, having developed something akin to emotion from the weight of their combined experiences. In the scene that follows after their pod's decision, you, the player, begin shooting each one of the names that comes up on the screen. You aren't fighting the gods of the story's narrative, but the actual game itself, the directors, producers, voice actors, so on and so forth. And this is where Albert Camus comes into play. His name is never mentioned once in the entirety of NieR Automata, yet the final message suggested by the game lines up almost perfectly with his ideas, specifically those presented in the myth of Sisyphus. Both Camus and NieR pose a question about whether a life without purpose is worthwhile, how one can be happy without a purpose, and most importantly, that life is important for its own sake, and that one does not need a purpose in order to justify living and enjoying life. This idea is the revelation tantamount to our three protagonists, who are in a state of nihilism and hopelessness after the loss of their purpose. The game finally provides us with an answer to the question, in a life devoid of ultimate meaning and purpose, why not just commit suicide? Which is the same question Camus asks at the very beginning of Myth of Sisyphus. Camus often examined the works and writings of other philosophers and explained why he rejected their ideas, in particular the idea that you can just choose your own meaning to life to replace a God-given meaning and purpose. In that lens, the hostility of the game towards all the machines named after philosophers suddenly makes sense. Even the most sympathetic of them, Pascal, suffers a tragic fate. This boss fight credit scene puts the player in the position of confronting the absurd, just as Camus writes. Man stands face to face with the irrational. He feels within him his longing for happiness and for reason. The absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. We are forced to face the gap between our capabilities and desires against the indifference of the universe by setting the player in an unwinnable battle against the creators of the game in an attempt to reach happiness and a happy ending for these characters. This battle, of course, cannot be won. It is simply impossible for you, the player, to shoot down the creators of the game, and this is demonstrated in gameplay by you being swarmed with so many hostile projectiles that the stage is literally impossible to beat. Yet as you die over and over, the game begins asking you questions. Do you believe life is meaningless? Do you believe games are just silly little things? Do you admit that there is no meaning to this world? And in order to continue and reach the true ending of this game, you must answer no to everyone. This is an illustration of Camus' concept of rejection, which is the notion that while we must acknowledge the indifference of the universe and the gap between our capacity and our intellectual desires, in order to live a fulfilling life in spite of that knowledge, it requires an emotional rejection of the cruelty of that reality. After all, according to Camus, there is so much stubborn hope in the human heart, and with our stubborn hope, we keep fighting this boss over and over again, in hopes of a happy ending. Despite the grim helplessness of the struggle, and after many deaths, the game states that you receive a rescue offer from another player. Reinforcements arrive in the form of many other players' ships encircling yours, and the song turns from a robotic melody into a crescendo of numerous voice in all the languages of the song. At the very end of the boss fight, 2B, 9S, and A2 are finally set free of the cycle of violence. The game even says, "A future is not given to you, it is something you must give yourself." Their data is not deleted, and they have the choice to live life on their own terms. Instead of falling into anguish over the possibility that their story will only lead to the eternal return of the same war and fighting their lives have been up to this point, they are happy. One must imagine 2B, 9S, and A2 and their pod caretakers as happy. They have freed themselves from murderous ideals and false truths, faced the absurd, rejected it, and found happiness in the revolt. For the struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. In the context of our protagonists, even if they fully understand that their existence is void of purpose, and that the cause that they have been fighting for their entire lives doesn't even exist, the struggles and battles they have fought to get here, this final ending, is enough to bring joy into their hearts. Yet, just when you think it's over, that you've achieved the final and the true ending, the game prompts you with one final question. In order to beat the endgame credit scene, the player is almost certainly required to accept the offer of assistance, just like you did. Now, you're given the opportunity to act as that giver of aid for someone else in order to let them finish their own game. There's just one catch. To do this, you'll need to delete all of your game's save data, permanently. You won't know who you'll help, and they'll have no way of thanking you. You might even help someone that you hate, or vice versa. Despite all this, you can choose to sacrifice all your progress, all your data, for a real person, someone out in the world. You can perform the ultimate act of being human, selfless, irrational sacrifice. NieR Automata and Camus both tell us to reject the cycle of conflict for there to be any hope for the future. The most defining act of being a human is to show love, empathy, and care for one another in the face of senseless hatred. To revolt against the absurd, even when there is a chance that it may all be in vain. The only way for us to escape the cycle of death and conflict is to commit an act of senseless, selfless compassion. Only then can we truly be free.